So, whatever happened to that strange and somewhat bizarre sci-fi thriller from 1980, Saturn III? Let's find out.
Movies, music, and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here, talking about movies, music, and monsters. Okay, Saturn III, I know that this is one of those very bizarre movies that people either love or hate. There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground when it comes to this possibly underrated and possibly over-criticized sci-fi flick. Just to set the record straight, when I saw this movie as a kid, I honestly have to say that I didn't hate it. I really wasn't old enough at the time to either appreciate or understand the subtle or not so subtle nuances in the film, but having seen the film again recently and being so tired of all the relentless negativity on YouTube, I do have to say that there are several aspects of this movie that I thought were really well done. I don't know, either I'm completely nuts or maybe I shouldn't have had that second blue dreamer pill after dinner. So grab your mechanical, psychopathic cyborg robot and a bucket of stale popcorn and let's dive in. For those of you who maybe haven't seen Saturn III, it's a British sci-fi film from 1980 where, apparently at this point in the somewhat distant future, the Earth, as we see quite a bit of during this time in Hollywood movie making, is once again in really bad shape. So, two scientists named Adam and Alex run an experimental hydroponics research station on the third moon of Saturn, otherwise known as Saturn III. A third character, Captain Benson, arrives on the planet with a very interesting robot named Hector, and from that point on, total carnage and a little bit of hilarity ensues. This film was just inundated with all kinds of issues from the start to the end, and that could be why the movie ended up looking the way it did. Who knows? Saturn III, originally titled The Helper, was the brainchild of John Barry, who was one of the leading production designers of the 1970s, A Clockwork Orange, the original Superman, and even the original Star Wars in 1977, which clearly and obviously launched this entire new genre of sci-fi movies. John Barry pitched the idea to producer Stanley Donen, who got a copy of the script to his friend Lou Grade, who, talk about luck, just happened to be reading the script on a cross-country airline flight, and who else was coincidentally on the plane? Well, Farrah Fawcett, of course. Farrah Fawcett, as you know, literally burst onto the Hollywood scene in the TV show Charlie's Angels, and you also might remember her from that famous poster that just about every guy on the planet at the time had hanging somewhere.
An interesting story. The title of that, before I started, was The Helper. It was about a man-manufactured robot who fell in love because he felt the emotions. And it was very interesting, the script.
And get this, Farrah Fawcett actually made more money from royalties from the sales of that poster than her entire salary appearing on Charlie's Angels. But after only one season, she quit the show to, shall we say, broaden her acting skills on the big screen. She cut her Hollywood chops on Logan's Run, a terrible movie called Sunburn, and eventually landed on Saturn III, which was a real testament to her star power at the time because, quite frankly, without her, this movie would never have been made. Kirk Douglas was, as a matter of fact, not the first choice to play Adam in Saturn III. Actually, he wasn't the second choice either. The production team originally wanted Sean Connery to play the lead role, but good old James Bond hadn't paid British taxes in like 10 years, so he was out of the country. Then they pursued Michael Caine, who turned the part down, so Kirk Douglas it is. Now, apparently Mr. Douglas took the job because he found the script really different and interesting, but also, according to the director and the writer, he was very insistent on doing scenes either partially nude or more preferably completely nude. Like he wanted that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I got nothing. The enormous age difference between a 32-year-old Farrah Fawcett and Kirk Douglas, who I think at the time was about 106, never really landed right with me, even as a kid. I distinctly remember thinking, what is this hot young girl doing getting in bed with her grandfather? What the heck kind of a movie is this? Kirk Douglas found his lounging around costume from the film so comfortable that when filming was completed, he took it home and used to wear it around his Los Angeles beach house. Harvey Keitel, who played Captain Benson, was really young at this point in his career and delivered such passionately romantic lines like, "You have a great body. May I use it?" Yeah, that one really went over well back in the early 1980s, I can tell you that. But man, what a career this guy had. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Taxi Driver, Academy Award nominations, winner of the AACTA Award for Best Actor, Pulp Fiction, From Dusk Till Dawn, and so many more. We could be here all day. After filming was completed during post-production, the director didn't care for the way that he delivered his lines with sort of a New York, Brooklyn accent. So they asked him to come back in and redub all his dialogue. Well, he basically said the hell with that, so his performance was completely redubbed by British stage and screen actor Roy Dotrice. Saturn III was being produced by a production company called ITC Entertainment, which was also at the same time producing a film called Raise the Titanic, another colossal box office bomb. But because the Titanic film was going so over budget, they elected to cut the budget on Saturn III. Don't seem quite fair, but that's showbiz. You know, a lot of people often claim and accuse this film of being a ripoff of Alien from 1979. But the truth is that's not really the way it went down. In fact, both Alien and Saturn III were in production at the same time. John Barry himself even claimed that the story idea had been written in the early 70s, years before Alien. You know, if anything, I would honestly have to say, in my opinion, that this film is much closer to Frankenstein than Alien. The giant menacing monster constructed by man whose evil actions aren't really the fault of the monster in the end. Filming for Saturn III began in late January 1979 with first-time director John Barry at the helm. And this is one place where the production design genius of John Barry really shines through. I mean, say what you want about the story, the sets on this film were absolutely awesome. Some of those opening shots of the military or the Empire or whatever the heck it was were just stunning. Really gorgeous compositions of imagery, which reminded me a little bit of 2001: A Space Odyssey combined with a little bit of THX 1138. Really impressive imagery. The sets were shot on not one, but two of the enormous sound stages at Shepperton Studios and were so large that even the crew would often get lost trying to get from one part of the set to the other. In fact, according to members of the production team, special maps were drawn up and placed around certain areas of the set to let the cast and crew know exactly how to get to a certain location. Yes, the production design of the physical sets were absolutely outstanding, but the special effects shots of the ships in space space, not so much. However, only 2 weeks into shooting, John Barry simply walked away from the entire project. Some say he was fired, some say he was dismissed, and others say that Kirk Douglas went to the studio heads to try to get John Barry removed so he could take over as director. I don't think anyone really knows, and sadly, just a short time later, John Barry died of complications with meningitis while working on The Empire Strikes Back. So now, on top of everything else, they had no director. Rumor even has it that after John Barry left, that Kirk Douglas himself supposedly assigned himself the director's position and acted as director for 3 days. And this is really odd and unprecedented. The producer, Stanley Donen, stepped in to take over as director. And to me, it was at this point that the movie just had no real chance. I mean, I don't blame Stanley Donen. Everybody said he was a super nice guy. But the problem was he had absolutely no experience in this kind of genre filmmaking. Prior to Saturn III, he was a director of musicals, like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and Singin' in the Rain with Gene Kelly. I don't know, just doesn't seem to me like a good fit any more than Jim Henson leaving the Muppets to go direct The Exorcist. But that's just the way it went down. And then there's the robot, Hector. The first in the line of Demigod series was pretty cool and one of the most expensive elements in Saturn III's $10 million budget, clocking in at almost $1 million to create. Well, actually, I guess more accurately, he would be considered a cyborg because he had a canister inside him of pure human brain tissue or something.
Hector was designed by John Barry in the art department, built by an outside contractor. We found that the head of the robot didn't have enough character. So we redesigned and we built the head of the robot so that it could have a lot more movement and be able to look natural than the one that was originally there.
There were several different versions of the robot made. Most of them were radio-controlled puppets and operated by a crew of 20 people. But occasionally there was an actor inside one of the suits, but most of the time it was basically a remote control prop that unfortunately really didn't work very well at all. But I still thought the robot was super cool. This cyborg literally rips a guy's face off and sticks it on his own robotic head. How cool is that? I never actually realized it as a kid, but there was also some really cool stop motion stuff done with Hector as well. There's a lot of things you can say that weren't that great about this film, but you certainly can't say that about the musical score. Bernstein wrote over an hour of music for this movie, a lot of it being very progressive and experimental, but sadly, most of it wasn't even used after the opening sequence until maybe the last half hour of the film. But the complete full score was released as a very limited edition CD in 2008 that is now, sadly, out of print. Well, only 15 weeks after production on Saturn III began, principal photography came to a close, the film went directly to post-production, and Farrah Fawcett went directly into divorce proceedings from her husband, Lee Majors, the $6 Million Man. Ah, the $6 Million Man. Video on that coming soon. Stay tuned. There were a couple different scenes that were ultimately cut from Saturn III before its theatrical release. One of them being an absolutely unbelievably bizarre segment where Adam and Alex take these weird blue dreamers pills, sing and dance and carry on, and eventually Farrah Fawcett ends up in some skin-tight leather fetish outfit with garters and some weird blown-out hairstyle looking, quite frankly, like a deranged Power Ranger from a really bad adult film. You gotta just trust me, folks. My description of this scene can't even begin to describe the sheer hilarity of the segment. But if you're really curious and have a very morbid sense of humor, you can check that scene out right here, here in this place. The segment was so embarrassing for Farrah Fawcett that she absolutely demanded that the scene be cut prior to the film's release, and for a lot of reasons, I certainly can't blame her. However, outside the United States, Farrah Fawcett, in this bizarre black fetish outfit, was right there front and center on all the foreign movie posters advertising the film. And this film was short, like really short, only 87 minutes long, with the beginning and ending credits. Well, Saturn III was released in February of 1980 and was theatrically considered a certified bomb. The film lost so much money, in fact, that it was, more or less, the end of Lou Grade's entire production company. Permanently. Critically, the film was absolutely slaughtered. In fact, this was one of the very few times that Siskel and Ebert both agreed on a combined score of 0, criticizing the film for, and I quote, having a shockingly low level of intelligence, a film that disregards the laws of physics, and a more than ridiculous love triangle between Kurt, Fawcett, and Keitel. Wow, easy there, guys. Well, Saturn III came and Saturn III went, and I guess this is one of those very few times that I honestly have to say that was it. It went. To my knowledge, there were no comic books, toys, collectibles, remakes, reimaginings, nothing. Okay, but whatever happened to all the really cool props, costumes, and robots from the film? Well, honestly, not much, but there are a couple of pieces of the chess game floating around out there. You might find the occasional Saturn III script here and there. Part of Farrah Fawcett's super sexy outfit from the cutscene sold back in 2018 at a heritage auction for almost $6,000. And other than a few miscellaneous posters and production stills, I'm afraid that's just about it. Okay, but what about Hector? Whatever happened to the psychopathic cyborg monster robot? Well, according to film historian Greg Moss, Hector was last seen in the Andrew Martin specialty shop in London, as seen here in this amazing photograph. Other than that, no one knows where Hector is today, which is kind of sad, but at least we know what's left of him is still out there somewhere, and that's pretty cool. If you guys really want to take a very deep dive into the entire history of Saturn III, you've got to check out this website by film historian Greg Moss called Something is Wrong on Saturn III. It's an absolutely fantastic website filled with any and all information you could possibly want on this film. Check it out. Link in the description. Saturn III was released on VHS, Betamax, and Laserdisc in the late 1980s, DVD in the 90s, and finally on Blu-ray in 2013. Okay, so the film had some production problems. The film was considered a box office bomb. People often considered it one of those films that's just so bad, it's good, but you know what? I don't care. I like it. I think the production design is outstanding. The soundtrack is simply fantastic, and the robot was super cool. It's a fun watch, and I honestly do recommend it. But don't go in thinking it's going to be some Stanley Kubrick masterpiece. Just turn the lights down, throw it in, grab a bucket of stale popcorn, and have some fun. Just shut your mind off and enjoy it for what it is. After all, this was the start of all those super fun sci-fi 1980s movies we all love to hate, like Battle Beyond the Stars, Flash Gordon, Galaxina, Heavy Metal, Outland, Dune, Dreamscape, Twilight Zone the movie, Buckaroo Banzai, and so many more. We could be here all day, but that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I really hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive into the history of Saturn III, and if you did and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we continue our conversation together about movies, music, and monsters.
Movies, music, and monsters.